uh, they say that if you work in an organization, if you're about 1 centimeter taller than the others, then actually you might end up getting rising a little higher in the organization, or you might be getting a slightly better increment. Taller people seem to be more successful. So I'm fairly tall. Renu, I take it you're taller.
Yes,
Okay?
yeah, of
But
course.
I think what Renu is going to give to you is a gift which will help you to get to the top of whatever profession that you are in. Good public speaking is very, very critical in the success of any individual working in an organized setup. So, Renu, I am sure you're going to make this evening very dhakar. So, I leave the platform to you. Please share with us, Renu. The platform is yours. Please,
Thank you
Renu.
so much, Mukesh. And we are going to go beyond public speaking. We are going to actually use public speaking, of course, but for presentations, making
Okay,
presentation skills. Okay.
right.
So let me start by saying that in order to make a Dhakar presentation, you have a lot of other presentation skills, but I'm
Hmm.
going to share with you some that will make your presentation a Dhakar presentation. So
Okay.
we start with what is it that we need to know. So I
Yes.
have identified four areas. You need to have knowledge of the audience.
Right.
Number two, knowledge of the tools of the presentation. Number
Uh-huh.
three, knowledge of the self as a presenter. And
Right.
four, knowledge of the subject and its logical organization. So
Okay.
let's talk about the knowledge of the audience. And I'd
Hmm.
like to share with you a story. Many years ago, I was invited to conduct a workshop for a series of them rather, for a hospital chain.
Right.
And the person who was speaking to me said to me that we will be doing for the doctors, and one day for doctors and one day for the nurses and the ward boys. So in
Right.
my mind, it was a 2 day workshop, one day
Hmm.
for doctors. So the first presentation skills program that I was, sorry, this was customer care. I went in expecting doctors to be seated there. And the shock that I got was that there were nurses and ward boys. So I
Oh my
first,
God.
yeah, it was another program. And then
Oh, I
I said,
see.
are you here for this program? They said,
Huh.
yes, you are Mrs. Mattu. I said, yes, I am. We are here for your program. Now,
Okay.
for a moment, I was faced, what am I going to do? My level of the training, I will need to bring down. Now, it is not difficult to bring it down, but you need a little time for preparation. So, the first thing that I'd like to say about the audience is please find out what is the composition of the audience. Who are they? How many are they? And importantly, are they how many decision makers and how many decision influencers? And it's
That's
important
right.
to
That's right.
remember,
Yeah.
Mukesh, that your decision makers may be just one or two, but
Yes.
the influencers will be a lot more.
Uh-huh. Hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
now you identified, okay, this
So,
is
so,
my.
so if I may just interrupt you, are you
Yes,
saying that you tailor the message that you're going to say depending on the profile of the audience? Do you do
absolutely.
it that way? Because
Absolutely,
is
Mukesh.
it with respect to the choice of words, or is it with respect to the content that you're going to kind
Yes.
of disseminate to them?
Essentially, it's the content and then, of course, the delivery. I'll give you
Okay.
another example. A
Right.
Rotary Club in Jharkhand invited me to talk to them. I had just come back from Mauritius, and they
Right.
said, come and please talk to us about Mauritius, its
Uh-huh.
social culture, business culture, etc. I
Okay.
really had to find children of all ages running
Oh.
around, shouting, etc., etc. Told me there'll be 20 people. There was no mic. I said, oh my God,
See.
how am I going to talk with these children running around? So I said,
Uh,
I'm very happy to have the
huh.
children. Why don't you all come and sit in front and I will talk to you? Now they came and
Okay.
sat in front, and the parents kept quiet also because they want to know what is she going to tell our children. I had to
Okay.
bring down that level. I had to make it fun. I talked about the huge
Hmm.
foxes that are as large as buffaloes, etc., etc. And I had
Right.
the entire audience in silence, but I was not able to talk about the business behavior of the Mauritians. I was only
Okay.
able to talk a little bit
So,
about
so, so
social.
that
So I had to
that
change
that
the content.
yes. So that point is well taken. That you need to know what is the target audience that you're talking to. But
Yes,
supposing, like you did mention, that the CEO of the company is sitting there, or some
yes,
strong influences are sitting there.
Yes.
So does that then, and you've got a lot of other people, in the
Right.
audience.
Right.
So are you saying, will you be talking to the CEO or will you be talking to the other people in the audience?
Mukesh, if I know my subject and if the
Right?
CEO is sitting there, it means I can also talk to him about the skill or the customer care or whatever it may be. So
Right.
therefore, it's very important that the CEO is there, but you don't tailor the entire presentation to him. I might say, for
Okay.
example, as you know, but I will
Right.
not tailor it only to him. Then I lose most of my audience. So I've
True.
got to hit somewhere in the middle in terms of the content. The delivery
Uh-huh.
will be maybe a little more, shall I say, less fun if I know that the man is serious, and
Right.
I can have more fun if the man is known to be someone who loves humor, etc. But
Right.
this is why it's important to know the audience,
Okay,
Mukesh.
that's a good point. But I remember talking to you, and you were
Sorry, Mukesh,
mentioning.
I can't hear you.
Uh, okay, am I audible
Yeah,
to you now?
a little better. Yes,
Okay, I remember talking to you a little earlier, and you told
yes,
me that in every presentation there has
yes,
to be some kind of a takeaway, and you
yes,
said something about give and take.
yes,
So,
yes.
what is this give and take business that you're talking about?
All right, let me explain that. And this is what will make at least this part of the presentation dhakad.
Okay,
Normally, Mukesh, when you ask people, why are you making this presentation? They say, because I want to update the audience, I want to overview for the audience, I want to tell the audience. It is all
yeah,
I want to give, and give.
uh
But
huh,
what you want to give must relate to what you're going to get from the audience. So, what you want to get, according to me, Mukesh, is the hook on which you hang the chandelier of the items of the agenda. What you will
okay,
give them is the item of the agenda. What
huh,
you will uh, take from them is, so I want, for example, Mukesh, I might say, I need
right,
you to give me an enhanced budgetary
yeah,
allowance of 10%, or I
yeah,
want you to let me hire 3 more people, or I
right,
want you to let me give me more space to run my office. These
right,
are things that I want you to give me. Let's say, Mukesh, you're the person and I'm talking to you. But
right,
in order for me to get what I want from you, I have to limit or focus what I'm going to give you. I can't give
okay,
you things that don't relate to what I want to get from you.
that's right.
So
So,
a
there
common
has to
thing
be a.
is, Mukesh,
So,
I can't hear you at all.
uh, can you hear me? I'm sorry.
It's very faint. I don't know why
Okay.
it's so faint.
Uh, okay. Uh, uh, will it be? Is this better?
Much better, much better.
Okay. Now, will it be that at the end of it, there is
Yes,
you got to get something out of making that presentation. There's a purpose, and
yes,
that's why
yes,
you're aiming to you're talking to them because you want to get them to do something about it. Am I right?
exactly.
I mean, otherwise it
Yes,
would be a purposeless kind of discussion.
yes. It's also like
Yeah.
this, Mukesh, that I have so much knowledge.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm going to sell you a pen. I've got so much
Right.
knowledge about that pen. I know the manufacturing process. I know the history of my company. I know the
Right.
quality standards, etc. I
Yes.
want you to buy this product for all your offices countrywide. I won't give you the history of the company, excepting to say we're a 150-year-old company. I will not give you the manufacturing process, excepting one line that we don't just do random assurance, quality assurance. We make sure that each item goes through assurance. But I'll tell you why
Right.
it is better. I will tell you how it is different from other similar products in the market. And the
Okay.
reason I'm doing that is so that I get that order from you.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
So therefore, this is the
Right.
give and the take. And
Okay.
it's important, Mukesh, right at the start to tell your audience what your presentation is about. So the title of the presentation. So the word
Right.
that I use is ensure that the title of your presentation is sexy. And a lot of
Uh-huh.
people raise
Oh,
their eyebrows
that
and they say,
sounds
what,
that sounds
sexy?
interesting.
And for me, sexy is the short form of self-explanatory.
Hey, that's a letdown.
Because otherwise, people give a very generalized title. And the audience
Okay.
makes its own guesses. Different
Right.
people have different ideas of what it can be all about. So make sure
Uh-huh.
it is totally self-explanatory. Okay.
Right.
It's important also, Mukesh, to tell your audience how many parts your presentation has, and
Okay.
what are these parts. You don't have to explain anything right at the very beginning, but you need to tell them divided into 4 parts, divided into 3 parts, and I will start with this, then go on to describing this and highlighting this, so that
Right.
they have a roadmap.
I think
And
you're
each
absolutely
time,
right. Absolutely. I completely agree with you. So often I have attended presentations and, for the first 5 minutes, I really don't know what he's talking about.
yeah,
And unless you don't state upfront what is the purpose of your discussion and how it's
yes,
going to get structured,
yes.
it becomes that much more difficult for the audience
That's
to
right.
relate.
That's right. So you
Well
need
said.
to tell them, and each time this I would have taken up a little later. I'm glad it's come now. So
Right.
what I'm saying is, let's say that I start with what is the problem with securing senior citizens. That's the
Okay.
first part. What is the problem? When I start, I say, let me start by telling you the major problems that senior citizens face. I describe that, and at the end, I say, so those are the problems that they face. Now that I've told you what problems they face, let me talk about solutions. So what I've done is, if you can see, I have done transitioning. So the audience
Uh-huh.
knows ये हिस्सा खत्म हो गया, अब ये वाला शुरू हो गया है.
Okay.
अब इसके बाद ये होगा, इसके बाद ये होगा. So always let your audience have an idea about the
The
structure of
transitioning
your
here. Yeah, because
presentation.
I've noticed that some people do it very nicely. They say what they have said, and then
Yeah.
they say that, okay, now I've said this, and now I'm going to talk about this.
Yes.
And which is the transitioning part that you're talking about, I think.
That's
Is
right.
that
In
right?
fact, if you,
Yeah.
we're going back a little bit to our MBA class, where
Yes.
we were told first tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them again what you've told them. And this
That's
really
right.
makes very good sense, Mukesh.
Yes. Okay.
Mukesh, telling at this point, we need to also tell the audience how long our presentation is, so that they know that this is the time that they will need to pay attention.
But that's a
We don't have a
difficult
1
thing to
hour.
do, Renu. That's
Sorry,
that's that's a difficult thing to do. How do you
I
tell how
agree
long?
with
I mean,
you.
some people may ask questions in between, and then
Yes,
how
they
do you
will.
handle that?
Sure, they will. But if you tell them my presentation is 15 minutes, maximum 20 minutes, and if it's
Right.
going to be, say, a 1 hour presentation, break it up into 2 or into
Uh-huh.
3 parts. Okay?
Okay.
Because if you tell them it's a 1 hour presentation, they will not keep quiet. They will interrupt you.
Okay.
But 15 minute, 20 minute तक तो आदमी चुप रह ही सकता है. Now,
Uh-huh.
importantly, tell the audience when you will take questions. So
Okay.
one of the first times that I was making a presentation, I thought I was being polite, और बड़े अच्छे से मैंने कहा, please feel free to interrupt me at any time during the presentation if you have a question. That was a stupid thing that I did. Questions kept coming, with the result that my presentation time got over and I still hadn't completed the presentation.
Right. People would hijack what you have to say and go into a
and they
tangent
actually do
completely.
that.
Yeah.
And they ask you questions which may not even be relevant, or only
That's
one
right.
person may be interested. So what I learned to do was to say that I'll be very happy to take your questions at the end of my 15 minutes of presentation time. Utna to aadmi chup बैठ ही सकता है. Now, once we've discussed the knowledge of the audience, let's quickly move on to knowledge of the tools of the presentation. There are lots of tools. Earlier, there were cue cards and pointers, etc. I'm going to talk about, importantly, about the podium and about the audiovisual aids. A lot of people hide behind the podium.
Yes, I've noticed that.
I'm sure you've seen that, Mukesh. They look like a head on a block of wood, or a sheet of glass. So therefore, even if there's a podium, you don't need it. You don't need to keep it, to use it. You're not making a seminar speech with all your papers on it. So therefore, please do not use a podium. The other thing is the reading material.
So when they're nervous, then they go and hide behind the podium.
Yes, there are people who've told me, but I have a tendency to shake my legs and all that. So if I'm behind the podium, nobody can see that. But what is it that they see? As I said, as we say in Bihar, mundi hai, aur lakdi ke tukde par wo hai. So therefore, no, do not use a podium. Reading material, have you seen, Mukesh, that, and this is another Dhakar item, they will distribute all the reading material in advance.
Well, that's
they will
the usual
not only
practice.
distribute. Sorry?
That's the usual practice.
usual
That's a
practice.
usual.
And worse, they
Right.
will also make copies of their slides, and hard copies वो distribute करते हैं. So
Right.
why do you need a presenter then? आप email
Yeah.
कर दो. So therefore,
Ah.
reading material must be
Right.
given only when it is needed. For example, a table. You're going to
Uh-huh.
discuss a table. उस वक्त distribute करें. 20 लोग हैं आपके room में. Give it
Right.
at that time. And then, of
Okay.
course, one word, since I'm talking about tables right now, we
Right.
need to remember that all audiences are not table savvy. So when you have a table which has got more than 4 rows and 5 or 6 columns, please, at the end of that table, if you have place on that slide or on the next slide, give a textual summary of the table.
But Renu, when you're making a business presentation,
Yeah.
there is so many tables and so much data. How do you manage
Yes.
that? What is your tip, on doing that, handling that?
True. You see, if you have a small audience, Mukesh, 4 or
Right.
5 people, जितने टेबल आपको देने हैं आप दीजिए. लेकिन आपकी 15-20 की अगर ऑडियंस है, तो वो
Right.
सब टेबल नहीं समझते हैं. Some people are not numerical, not table savvy.
तो क्या
उनके
करा
लिए, a summarization of the important points of that table are very, very important in text form. I've just recently concluded a presentation skills workshop where everything was brought down to tables. On the second day, I said, can you please, जो आप explain कर रहे हो, एक slide में explain कर दो. So that I am not following these tables at all. No, ma'am, I will put circles around the figures. No, even then I will not follow. Please put this. So I would recommend, if your audience is only 4 or 5, do up tables. They are also going to be able. Sorry?
Graphs and pie charts and things like that people use. Does that work?
Even yes, pie charts also have numbers. जरूर दीजिए pie charts दीजिए. Line graphs आप दें. Line graphs and pie charts are easier than tables. I agree with you.
Yeah.
If it is only tables, please give half a slide of summary.
Yeah, like I can see somebody has said that how to do data visualization. Is so important.
That's right.
Yeah?
That's right.
That's well said.
बिल्कुल. ये जो आप डेटा विजुअलाइजेशन की बात कर रहे हैं, पाई चार्ट से अच्छा रहता है और लाइन ग्राफ से अच्छा रहता है, बार चार्ट से अच्छा रहता है. Okay. Mukesh, there are times when I'm not able to make out what you're saying, so I don't know how.
No, you're saying the right thing. Your sixth sense is, we're on the right side.
Now let me move quickly to audio-visual aids, because if you're making a business presentation, audio-visual aids to काम आते ही हैं. So this American marketing expert Guy Kawasaki, he has a 10-20-30 rule. 10 slides, maximum duration, 20 minutes of a presentation, and no font size to be less than 30.
Really?
It's not possible to hold on to this all the time, but it's a very good idea. इससे क्या होता है कि हम slides भी कम दिखाते हैं, presentation का duration भी हम कम रखते हैं, और हमारा slide पढ़ा जाता है. Remember that the smaller the audience, there's a possibility of using small font and a lot of text. The larger the audience, you need to use larger font and less text. So this, if you can remember this rule, it's very easy then to make sure that your audience is able to read what you have said.
Somebody said, somebody said you call it less is more.
Yes.
Less is more. Is that work? Less is more.
Very true, Mukesh. Less is more for a large audience, but when you have only 4 people or 5 people, then it is all right to give more text. It's all right to explain more, because they're all on the same page. Most of them will possibly be either technical experts or finance experts or marketing experts. But if you have a mixed audience, you can't go by the more is better. Then you really have to go by less is more. Yeah.
There is a interesting question, that somebody has posed, and she says that, how about role plays and fun and music in a technical presentation? Does that work?
Not really.
Or it has certain limitations?
Business presentation, in fact, with a larger audience, management trainees, etc., do that and ask for more speaking time. But if it's a serious business presentation, sure, humor has its place, but you shouldn't. I've had people say, "Oh, I'm going to tell you a funny joke." Well, first of all jokes are funny. I'm going to tell you a funny story. No, it should just come in naturally. But It
Okay.
must still be rehearsed. You rehearse it as a presenter, but when you present it, it should appear, oh, मेरे दिमाग में अभी अभी आया, तो मैं आपको ये बता रही हूँ या बता रहा हूँ. So humor की place है, but music की place इतनी नहीं है. You're not talking about your company's background, but
Right.
for example, when we started this, there was music and it was nice, but it
Right.
would now disturb because either my voice would not be heard. I can't hear your voice very well also. So therefore,
Right.
music को avoid करो. बीच
Uh,
में हल्के से एक cartoon डाल देना है. That's all
Okay.
right. That's
Okay.
okay. But I think that your speaking style, Mukesh, must be animated rather than all of these things in a business presentation.
No, okay. So there's a question that I need to ask you. Should you display passion in what you're saying, or should you? It's a business presentation, and therefore you need to have there is no room for passion at all.
I think it's perfectly okay if your passion
Renu, your voice is not audible. Uh, I hope everyone can hear.
Yes,
Uh,
sir. I can hear
yeah.
you.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. No. So Renu's voice is she audible? You know, Renu, you're not audible. Renu, we've lost you. We can't. Yeah, you're back now. You're back. Can you just say that again, because we lost you? We couldn't hear you.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Passion, interest, and involvement.
Right.
These are important. So therefore, a dead monotone is not the right thing to do. Stress the right words. Highlight important words. Say them twice if it helps. So passion is, and the passion they will see, they'll hear in your voice. So therefore, let me put it this way. They will know that you are passionate about your subject.
Okay, so that should show.
Sorry?
That should show. You're saying that should show.
Yeah. Your own interests and of course, the depth of your knowledge, etc. But the passion must come across. This is a subject that I love. That must come across.
Okay.
There was another point that I wanted to talk again, I used to make a mistake. I would project a slide and start talking at once. Now, at that time, I didn't realize that when I project a slide, the audience has already talked to me, met me. Now, I project a slide, they are interested in any new movement. That slide is a new movement. They want to know what's on that slide.
Right.
They also want to know what my explanation is going to be. So they don't know, should they listen to me? Should they read what's on the slide? I learned that give them enough seconds of time to quickly scan the slide. So I have a formula, which I call the P4 formula. Project your slide, point to the slide by saying, say for example, I'll give you a moment to take a look at this. Then pause for anything from 3 to 5 to 6 seconds and then prate. That means to talk. So project, point, pause, and then prate. By then the audience has satisfied its curiosity.
No, that's a good one. Yeah, good this thing. But tell me, Renu, somewhere down the line, people say that what you write on the PPT is more for the presenter to explain, and it is not meant for the audience to start reading. Otherwise, if they've read it all, then what is the role of the presenter anyway?
That is why, Mukesh, you don't write full paragraphs. People just do a cut and paste. Then you only write, say maybe you've got 5 lines, 6 lines, each line to have maybe 5 or 6 or 7 words at the most, or 8 words at the most, which means that you have to explain to get that point across. So therefore you don't write everything. अगर लिखना ही है मुकेश तो फिर आप email से भेज दो सारा. Isn't that right?
Right.
So that is meant for the audience. It's a cue to me. इसके बाद ये करना है. And do remember, अगर मेरे 8 points हैं, I don't have to explain every point. So I have another formula. I call it the EX4 formula. What you write, you explain, you give an example, you expand, explain, expand, give an example, but not every point. Exclude.
Right.
So, for
No, of
example, you
course.
say,
Point well
I'll give
taken.
you, I'd like
Right.
to detail point numbers 1 and 3.
Yeah. No, no,
So, which means
yeah.
that don't
Yeah.
explain every point. Many of them are so self-explanatory,
Yeah.
they
You know,
don't need
yeah.
any explanation.
We got
Mukesh, I
somebody.
wish I could hear you a little better.
Okay, somebody else has given us a suggestion
Yes,
from the audience saying that should you use an analogy,
yes,
to handle the data. Does that work?
yes, absolutely. Because that is what audiences relate to. An anecdote, a
Yes.
story,
Uh,
and analogy. These are things that the audience relates to. And
right.
they suddenly understand things. And if you can use something that everybody understands, for example, you can give a car analogy,
Right.
for something that is nothing to do with vehicles. Give an
Right.
anecdote. ये जो मैंने आपको senior citizen वाला जो बताया था, उसमें
Uh,
my first line was 3 days ago, my neighbors, an elderly couple in their 70s, were beaten, robbed, and left for dead. And this was the
ouch.
third such case in the colony. Do you remember Reader's Digest? Almost every article used to start with a story, an anecdote, an analogy.
Yeah. So
I think we
stories
used
and
to love that.
anecdotes work well. We should factor in a story or an anecdote wherever
Yes,
possible.
yes, absolutely. It also
You know?
reduces the stress of too much of business. So therefore, yes, definitely do that.
Yes, I think that
Use an
once
analogy.
once upon
Definitely.
a time,
Yeah.
what once upon a time, as was the starting line for stories when we were children. You know.
That's right.
So,
Once upon a time, absolutely. And I have been conducting workshops on how to tell stories.
right.
So even
Right.
if the story is from Indian mythology or a film or
Huh.
something that you read as a child, it's all
Right.
right. And
Right.
if people relate to it, it's even better. So, for example, if you say, hey, for those of you who've seen Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, you will
Huh.
remember, and immediately, the audience connects. So, therefore, stories,
That's
anecdotes,
right. Yeah.
or a startling figure, these are all very important. They
So,
add so much value.
Renu, one question that is coming up: what
Yes.
do you do to make your online presentation more dhakar? Because we have certain limitations, of this
Yes.
medium. So, what
Yes,
is it?
yes.
If you can throw some light on that.
Mukesh, let's put it this way. This would be very dull and boring if you and I did not have an interaction. But not
Okay.
so therefore it makes it interesting because you're asking me questions and
Right.
I'm having to think on my feet,
Right.
etc. It makes it interesting even for others. But an
Right.
online webinar has
Right.
always suffered from this. It just looks like someone is talking, and there is no interaction. Because if we allow too much of interaction, your speaking time is reduced, your information giving time is reduced. So therefore, I think that अगर जैसे आप और मैं कर रहे हैं, अगर
Right.
कोई भी ऐसे webinar में you get somebody, if they are lucky to get someone like you, I think that will be far more interesting.
And I think the chat box is a good medium, no? The chat
Exactly,
box,
absolutely,
which
absolutely.
you are able to relate to the audience, and use that.
Absolutely. For example, Mukesh, Hindi films and stories that we were brought up on, the Panchtantra, etc. These are
Right.
really very good. I know someone who did the whole Alice in Wonderland on a webinar.
Okay.
Not every bit of it, but because it's also a management book. When we
Right.
were at Excel, I remember Professor Nair talking about it. I
Right.
was so interested, I read it again. So therefore, anything like that, But the problem with a chat is if I'm doing that webinar, I have to know when to stop and move on. Because if I don't stop and move on, हमारा time निकल जाएगा उसमें, मुकेश, सिर्फ chatting में.
Right.
और कई बार वो chat जो होती है वो इतनी relevant नहीं होती है, but you can't tell your audience, sorry, that's not relevant. For them, everything is relevant. So you say, a good thing is to say, that's interesting. Can I come back to you on that towards the end or in a little bit? वो भी भूल जाते हैं. आप अगर भूल गए कोई फर्क नहीं.
A polite way of telling him to shut up. Is that?
Exactly. So वो जब अगर वो भूल जाते हैं ना, Mukesh, don't say, oh, you were going to say something. They've forgotten. It's all right. It doesn't matter because you need to complete the let's say the matter, the information that you're going to share with them. So,
Okay.
Mukesh, what we've done just now is we've finished discussing the knowledge of the audience and
Well said.
the
Yes.
knowledge of the tools of the presentation
Yes.
briefly.
Right.
Sorry, tools of the presentation में इतना ज़रूर कहना चाहूँगी
Huh.
that please don't look back to read the screen. Have you seen some presenters, they turn their back to the audience and they are reading the slide. They
That's
should
right.
not do that. Just point to it, let the audience read it and say, point number 2, let me explain this. The other thing is slide की discussion खत्म हो गई है.
Huh.
You need to close that slide. How do you do it? Enter B, plain B. If you enter
That's
plain
right.
B,
Put
it
a
goes
dark stream.
blank.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
when you want to come back, you enter B again and
Right.
you can come back to that slide and move.
Right.
Also, too many slides. You know, the international norm is
Huh.
one slide should take a speaker anything between 2 to 5 minutes. और
Right.
हम क्या करते हैं कि हम लोग 1 मिनट में 5 स्लाइड टक 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 टक
Oh,
करते हैं.
2 to 5 minutes per
One
slide.
slide. One
Which
slide.
means
Because
you
you're
have
going to
to talk.
explain.
Which means you have to talk much more beyond what is appearing on the slide, obviously.
If you have to talk a lot
हाँ.
more, it's okay. 6 मिनट कर दीजिएगा. But
हाँ.
ये नहीं होना चाहिए कि आप 1 मिनट में 6 स्लाइड्स कर रहे हैं.
Huh.
You know, some people just become slide drivers. They just
Right.
keep tuck, 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 tuck. And the audience doesn't even have time to see it. But I have to move
Okay.
on to the next one and the next one. So
Right.
therefore, remember that you need to use more speaking time,
Right.
less slide time. And
Pointing it.
finally, let me move now to knowledge of the self as a presenter. This is something
Important.
that is commonly neglected,
Right.
Mukesh. I've had, in fact, you remember you were saying that, but if you know the subject, then why are these things important?
Yes.
You know, the
Sure.
first, when you stand there, even if it's for an in-house presentation, they're going to look at you. अगर आपका एक button भी missing है, yeah, it is not the same as the others. The entire attention goes to that one button, which is not the same.
No,
Which
that's
is
right. The
either
audience
missing or
has
is different.
the audience has this,
The audience sees
ability
it,
to
and then there are.
see
जब
all the
हम लोग
mistakes that you make.
XLRI में थे, तो हम तो note लिख के भेज देते थे, button is missing. Yeah, you know, something else is quite wrong. So audiences are looking for distractions, and we have to make sure not to get them distracted. So the rule, the norm really is that I, the speaker, making the presentation, I must dress one level more formal than my audience. So let us say if the audience is all sitting in plain shirts or maybe, you know, micro checked shirts, etc. I must at least wear a tie over my shirt. Because if I'm also going to be wearing shirts, I'm the same level as my audience. And if the audience is all in ties, I must have a suit. So level only.
No, thank you for correcting me, because I'm sitting in a t-shirt and you're dressed up so well. So I'm perhaps wrongly
advantage
dressed
that you have
for,
is that
for
you're
the
very
session
handsome.
today.
As Indu will agree with me, you're very handsome. आप कुछ भी पहन के आ जाओ, it's all right. Which reminds me, when I used to tell the Tata Steel management trainees, please remember to wear either a blue or a white plain shirt with this kind of trouser. One of the cheeky little boys said to me, "But ma'am, Rusi Modi wears a red shirt and comes to work." So I told him, I said,
remember that.
He used to wear a red shirt sometimes. I said, the day you reach Rusi Modi's level, come to work in a tauliya and you'll be all right. But till you reach that level, please dress a little more formal than you should. So this word went around and I was afraid Rusi is going to hear it and say, what are you telling my management
tell
trainees?
me, haven't the times changed? You know, people are getting a little bit more casual.
Yes.
You know, I have seen many a senior executive, you know, sitting, standing there in his sports shoes and jeans and wearing a, round neck t-shirt and speaking to the audience. I mean, you got Steve Jobs, I mean, he did it all the time.
Very true. I think it's got to be like Mother Teresa wearing that 60 rupees ki dhoti. Isn't that right? But these are exceptional people. Look at the hairstyle that Abdul Kalam had. How much respect he got from all of us. He didn't change his hairstyle. So let the CEO dress as he wants to. But if I'm at a junior level, if I'm junior to him, let him sit in the audience in a pair of jeans. But I can't afford to do that. If the entire audience is, let's say wearing boxer shorts, tab aap jeans पहन के presentation करिए. But I think it's very important, Mukesh. It's a matter of respect for the audience.
Well
So
said,
from
well
the
said.
plant, for example, if your hands are greasy and the
Right.
CEO calls you for a meeting, you will
Right.
try to clean your hands as best as you
No,
can.
absolutely.
So
You got
it's
to,
the same thing. It's
yeah, no.
respect for the audience.
And
Now,
be,
when you
hygienic
when
best, like you said, you got to be look hygienic at least, no?
absolutely no, and I think I really believe it's a matter of self-respect
Yeah.
and respect for your audience. ये दोनों के लिए बहुत जरूरी है. Now, when you talking about yourself as a presenter, apart
Right.
from dress, your language is important.
Okay.
So very many of us Indians, our English is good, so we think the bigger the word, the better I will sound. No.
Right.
The simpler the word, so long as it conveys the right meaning, simple
Right.
words, short sentences, and avoid abbreviations. Some years ago, this guy said to me, so ma'am, we have to be very careful of STP. Only then will, things work. So earlier he had said LTP. I said, what is LTP? The look on his face was, you stupid woman, you don't even know what LTP is. LTP is long-term planning. I remember
learned
that.
something new
So
today.
I said, so STP, only then will STP work. So I said, STP is short-term planning. No, ma'am, sewage treatment plant.
Oh
so
my
I said,
God.
but how am I to know that? So therefore, unless the abbreviation is globally known, or unless I, the presenter, know that 100% of this audience knows the abbreviation, in-house abbreviation to an in-house audience, avoid abbreviations. And you know who's the most guilty of abbreviations? MBAs. So you and I and all the MBAs in this audience, they will be the ones who will be using short abbreviations quite commonly. Now, very often, हम लोग, I mean, yeah, okay, ये सब filler words हैं, and they show lack of vocabulary. आदत है तो उस आदत पढ़ते पढ़ते पढ़ती है, टूटते टूटते टूट जाती है. If you are in the habit of saying a lot of many of our cricketers have that habit. We need to cut that down.
Because we got to fill up the empty spaces, no, of what your presentation is. So
True,
people
but
talk,
you can't do
it.
Can't do it too many times. बीच में तो आएगा. There will be, Mukesh, there will be times when I will stammer. I don't know. I'm stammering, and that's okay. I'm looking for a word, but I can't do it too many times. So people use these filler sounds too many times.
In fact, if I may say, if I may say, if you pause in your presentation, it has a lot of impact. You say something and you pause, and that kind of registers strong.
Absolutely right. Absolutely. Draws the attention of the audience to what you're saying. Pause. Repeat critical words. Repeat critical words. So I've just done that. So then you get the attention of the audience. One of the reasons why I suggest that break up your presentation into 15 to 20 minute slots is so that you get the attention of the audience. Jitna lamba karenge, utni attention kam hogi, unless what we are doing right now is you and I interacting. That's all right, Mukesh. But अगर मैं अकेली बोल रही हूँ, तो ऐसे में तो मैं कहूँगी कि शिल्पा शेट्टी को भी लोग थोड़ी देर में सुनना बंद कर देंगे, though she's so attractive. So therefore, I would say, Mukesh, I wanted to also tell you about managing your body language. Make sure that your gestures are natural but not ineffective. Crossing your arms across your chest, putting your hands in the pocket, playing with the ring, playing with your collar. All these are gestures that are best avoided. Better hold your hand.
A lot of people don't know what to do with their hands.
Yes, yes.
So what should you put your hands, tightly around you, or behind your back, or in your pocket, or how do you use your hands to advantage?
So what you do is hold your hands at the stomach waist level in a loose clasp. So the advantage of this is that they are in a place, and because they are in a loose clasp, it's easy to move them out. From there,
Okay.
you can move them out. You can point to the screen. So that's another gesture that you are using. But agar बांध के रखते हैं, we had a very intelligent boy in one program, a tall, lanky boy from the south, brilliant,
Right.
absolutely. But he would start with holding behind his back one arm, holding the other, and that went through the whole presentation. So later on, I told him that, why don't you use your hands? He said, no, I'm awkward. I said, this was more awkward. The way you were sort of looking at the, holding your arms. So natural rakho. Some people use their hands a lot. I use my hands a lot.
Okay.
The Germans use their hands very little.
Yeah. So when you're talking about hands, then there is something to do with body language and what, somebody in the audience is all saying, the power of the posture.
Yes, absolutely.
So give us some tips on that. I mean, in terms of how should you...
Very much so. Some of us have the habit of swinging from leg to leg. So when you're swinging from leg to leg, what happens is that it's almost like you're on a ship and you're swaying on a ship. So you're going to get seasick and the audience is going to get seasick. So stand with your weight balanced evenly on both your legs. Okay. Don't lean against a wall. Don't lean on the table. Don't bend over. So the right thing is balance your weight. By the way, any foot movement has to have a purpose. Purpose is I'm going to walk towards the screen. So therefore there's a movement. I'm going to move away because somebody is sitting in a place where I know they cannot see the entire screen. So I will move. I might need to come back. So far as posture is concerned, as steady as you can, you will look strong. Don't sway unnecessarily or lean. Wanted to talk a little bit about eye contact. So I was coaching a very senior executive in a company, and they presentation audience an audience of about 8 or so. The CEO was sitting also. Throughout the presentation, he maintained eye contact only with the CEO. Now the result is that the person
so should you do that? I thought you should do that.
He's and the CEO after a while started to look down and started to read something because he was uncomfortable with this very intense eye contact. So sweep your eyes across the room. Make sure that you get in as many people as you can in terms of establishing rapport.
Somebody calls it the lighthouse, gaze.
Yes.
Is that the right way to do it?
The lighthouse effect is very good if you're afraid of crashing on the rocks. But if you're not, then you don't need the lighthouse effect. You have to, or if you're using the lighthouse effect, then you make sure that the lighthouse light goes round and round. And
that's what he thinks. I think he means. It's a roving eye.
Yeah, it's a roving eye. Absolutely right. Absolutely.
Okay.
So wanted to also talk about managing your time well when you're talking about yourself. I had one client who started by, when he was giving the time, he said, and this was important, my presentation will probably take approximately 10 to 20 minutes or thereabouts. So I stopped him. I said, how uncertain you are? Probably, approximately 10 to 20 minutes. Not even 10 to 11 and or thereabouts. So you need to, the rule is, if it's a 10-minute presentation, say 10 minutes but finish in 9. 15 minutes, say 15 minutes and finish in let's say 14 minutes, okay?
But I noticed that, whenever, Renu, whenever a senior person is talking, the managing director or a very senior person, he says that he's going to speak for 10 minutes and he ends up talking for 45 minutes. So what do you have to say to that?
Nothing. He's the boss. He's the boss. If your wife or if your CEO does that, shut up. Let him do it. So you really have no choice. You can't tell him. But I will also tell you that I've conducted workshops for CEOs of very big companies, and when they've invited me to help them, they have understood this point that if you say 10 minutes, you finish in 9 minutes. No, but I have a lot to say. Then don't say 10 minutes. Then say 15 minutes and finish in 14 minutes. So this is, I think, something only when they are ready to learn that you can say this to them. But if they are not ready to learn, can you ever tell your wife to shut up?
No. She's the CEO. She's the CEO. She calls the shots, like somebody said.
Sorry?
She's the
Okay.
CEO, and
Yeah.
she calls the shots. So the
She
fact is
calls the
that you
shots.
better shut
You
up.
think that you are the director of your company. She's the managing director of the director. So therefore, you need to be careful.
Okay,
Mukesh,
we
we
need to teach
finished
them
with the
importance
audience
of
the
time. Somebody's
tools
saying.
of the presentation and knowledge of self. Very quickly,
Right.
I'd like to talk about knowledge of the subject.
Uh-huh.
This is a dhakar point because as Indians, if I'm talking about a subject, I feel that I have to give all the gyan that I have.
Right.
I have to start from the very foundation, the very beginning. I was a part of a panel on the cleaning of the Ganges. This is some years ago,
Right.
and this man, and then I went to Singapore to conduct the same program on
Uh-huh.
presentation skills. And this man was there. He said, "Do you do this in India?" I said, "Of course I do this in India." He said, "I don't think that you've done it very successfully because this is what happened." They were talking about the fact that the Ganga starts to get polluted practically from the spring.
Right.
So this man, the Indian, started talking about Shivji, how the Ganga erupted from the head, how then the Ganga took this course and that course. He said
Yeah, you got
45 minutes and he's
so many
taken over
crores of
30 minutes till
gods.
he got a note saying,
Right.
please, your time is up. So therefore, we
Okay.
have to be very careful, Mukesh, in terms of making sure that we stick to the time. Now,
Okay,
how much
which
to
tells
cover?
me we got another 5 minutes to go.
Yes, I know. So I'm going to finish this very quickly.
Yes.
Mukesh, something that is dhakad, which a lot of people don't do is, I've already discussed it briefly, transitioning sentences. Let
Right.
me start with this, describe. Now that I've finished talking about this, I'd like to move on to this, finish that. So let me now move on to, so you have to do transitioning. Otherwise, Mukesh, people don't know when, and you said this also, you don't know when you started, when you are ending. Another important thing is mid-presentation checks at critical points to ensure that your audience is with you. Would you agree with me about this? And if you get a silence from the audience, which is what happened to me in Nepal, they told me, "ये सब managers हैं, naval bank है नेपाल में एक, ये सब managers हैं with 8 years of experience." I thought 8 years of experience managers, they would be knowing everything. And my subject was motivation. So I said, I'm not going to give you the basics of motivation. And they're staring at me. And I'm saying, would you agree with that? They're staring at me. I went and spoke to the general manager. I said, they don't respond at all. So I told him this. He said, no. 8 years of experience in the bank, but as clerks, they've just been promoted as managers. Why didn't you tell me that? Two mistakes I made. One, I didn't check the audience. And number two, I didn't realize what that word managers meant. So
on a
at the
lighter
end
note,
of your...
you were a very pretty lady, and that's why they were staring at you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to believe that. And
Okay, sorry.
Ashok is, as you know, that
Yeah.
Ashok passed away some years ago, but I'm sure he's listening to you. Okay.
Okay.
When you conclude, you finish, you summarize quickly, and you say, and now I'll be happy to take questions. So far as very quickly about questions, Mukesh, listen to the question or objection fully, completely, because I've understood your question, so I will either make a sign saying, okay, stop, I know, or I will interrupt. And there are times when people say,
I've understood.
Let me finish. Yeah, so therefore we need to do that. And if you get the feeling that someone is seeking details that only interest him, give a one-line answer and say, your point is very interesting. Can we meet after this presentation, where I would love to listen to your point of view. And finally, what if someone in the audience proves you wrong during the question answer session?
So they want you to, how do you handle that?
To defend ourselves. No, say, is that so, sir? It's not 4%, it's 3 point something percent. Is that so, sir? Thank you so very much. And I'm definitely going to check this and correct myself. Or you missed this particular point. Thank you, sir. That was very, very useful. And I will remember to include it. Don't argue unnecessarily. Let them win. They will never let you win anyway. So let them
in front of audience.
Let them win. I believe ultimately that if you want to make a dhakad presentation, Mukesh, you need to practice very well, know your subject and your facts well, structure your matter logically, deliver with power and passion. We come back to the word that you like, passion, and demonstrate the right attitude towards your audience. And now, if there are questions, Mukesh, I would love to take.
Just one or two more tips. I just want to ask you, you know, how long does it take you to prepare for a 20-minute presentation? How long should somebody take?
When I first joined Excel as a faculty member, I
Right.
was told that for a 90-minute session, you have to prepare for 9 days. And I said, what nonsense.
Uh-huh.
It's my subject and I know it and I know what to say. But they were right.
Right.
Father McGrath was one of those people who told me this. They were
Yes.
right. So therefore, you start preparing much in advance, but the practice, if it's your subject, you may not need to mug up, you may not need to practice too much, but you need to make sure that is point ke baad ye aana hai, iske baad ye
Okay.
aana hai. So on your laptop, just put the points, it's your subject, practice, practice, practice. But I would still say, very often, you know, when I correct some of the men, they say, oh, my wife also says the same thing. Listen to her. Listen to her. She will tell you, you are leading too much. You are
Okay.
talking too fast.
Right.
You're not looking me in the eye. Listen to her. She is your best coach. She is your
Okay.
best coach. So
Okay.
therefore,
I think we've
will you
talked
tell
enough.
your wife that I said this, please?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
all
will
right,
be sure
okay.
not to tell her that.
Sure not to tell her. Okay.
Okay. No,
Any special question?
Renu,
I'm sorry, I'm leaning forward because
no,
I can't hear you very
yeah,
well.
no,
Okay?
no,
And
I
not
think,
because I'm deaf, but because the sound is low.
yeah, no, I think
Okay.
we need to kind of take some questions from the audience.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you can, if anybody wants to have this thing, so I can see that, Abhishek Uppal has raised his hand. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And
Yes.
he's one such. And Nitin, is it possible to unmute Abhishek, or can we ask him to kind of just, put it
Yes. Yeah.
in the chat box?
Yes.
Done,
Because
sir.
I can't, since I can't see that
Yeah.
and I
So,
can't
so
hear.
because Renu
So
can't see
Nitin
the
or you
chat
might need
box.
to do it
Okay,
loudly.
Okay, so can
I
we?
would request Abhishek to just jot down his question. That would be great.
Okay, okay,
Yeah. Okay.
okay. If you can jot it down, and then we can read it out here. Okay.
All right.
Alright.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. One of the questions that is coming along is that, how long should you spend on a single slide? Is it that you should spend equal amount of time in every slide, or is it that this thing? It can vary.
Not at all, not at all. Anything between 2 to 5 minutes or 6 minutes, but some slides may take 6 minutes and while others may take barely 3 minutes. So you don't divide your slides according to 6 minutes on this and 6 on that and 6 on the next one. No, it depends on the matter and your ability to explain clearly, quickly.
Okay, that's right. I mean, I thought, some slides could be just even a minute if you wanted to. And if the point is taken home, there's no point in spending more time.
No,
No?
no.
And you can carry on to the next slide, no? So from that point
Absolutely,
of view.
absolutely.
Okay, one
There's
more.
a question here, Mukesh, that has come in. How
Yes.
do you handle your fear? And I will
Absolutely.
just
I was
say,
going to ask you that.
yeah,
Yes.
how do you handle fear?
Huh.
What is confidence? Confidence is a function of knowledge,
Right.
and fear is a function of not knowing. If
Right.
you know your subject, you know your audience, you know yourself as a presenter,
Right.
then and you practice, you
Right.
get more and more confident, and then
That's right.
the fear will
Right.
always be there.
Huh.
Mukesh, at this age, when I go to conduct a workshop, I manage my fear. I am afraid. I don't know
Are you
what this
afraid?
audience is going to be
Really?
like. I know a lot of people say, how can you be afraid? And I walk in early, set myself up,
Right.
own the room, look at the paintings on the room, etc. And
You-
then I wait near the door, and as
Right.
people walk in, I greet them, I shake hands with them, I ask them,
Yeah.
how would you like me to address you?
Yeah.
So recently I conducted a program in Bombay where
Yeah.
a very serious looking man, very senior, walked in, and
Yeah.
I didn't know he was that senior. I said,
Yeah.
how would you like me to address you? Oh, anything. So
Right.
I said, that's a little risky. Would you like me to say Mr. Puri, or your first name is whatever it was? And he said,
Right.
please call me Mr. Puri. Very serious. I said,
Yeah.
sure, Mr. Puri.
Sure.
By the time we finished the second day, he had become my best friend.
Okay.
So, what happens is you manage your fear by becoming friends with the audience.
No,
You
that's
manage
right.
your fear by looking at them. Yeah?
Yeah. No, I think the butterflies in the stomach, is kind of, everyone gets that, no matter how many times you've done the presentation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
But
what you need to do is get them
use
flying
it
in
to
formation.
your-
Don't let them collide with each other.
That's
Get
right.
them to fly in the right formation,
I-
circular or whatever,
I
rather
heard
than colliding with
somebody
each
put
other.
that
Yeah.
in that group also. That's right.
Okay. All
Yes,
right.
that's right. No, so that's the one way. The other way is to kind of pump yourself up when saying that no, you're the subject matter expert. It's just like saying that Muhammad Ali used to say, "I'm the best, I'm the best." So should you do that?
No, Mukesh, I don't think so.
You don't
I
think so?
recognize one thing.
Okay.
I am the expert in this program on, say, presentation skills.
Right.
My audience of 15 to 16 is an expert in their field.
Yes,
so therefore, I have to respect that audience and its field.
Right.
So therefore, I know my field. But if I were to sit down and talk to them, I'll find that they also know, उनको भी ये पता है, उनको भी आगे ये पता है, उनको भी ये पता है. मुझे, Mukesh, I really believe that arrogance does not work. Discourtesy, arrogance leads to discourtesy. It leads to a wrong attitude towards your audience. I have to be friends with, and more importantly, respect my audience. I have to do that. So therefore, Mukesh, I think that nahi, ये मैं कभी भी advise नहीं करूँगी. One young man said to me in Bangalore, there is no need to tell me what I'm not good at. You only tell me what I'm good at. I said, sure. So I told him, you're good at this, you're good at this, you're good at this, and I kept quiet. He said, and? I said, you told me to tell you what you were good at. Okay, can I change my mind? Of course you can change your mind. And then he said, now tell me what I need to improve. You see, you respect them, then they start to respect you. Okay. Somebody's raised their hand. I cannot know who.
Yeah, it's difficult to reach out to people who are with raising their hands. But we are somebody's asking in terms of, can you give some tips on how to build rapport with the audience?
Yes, of course.
And that too in an online session. So that's doubly challenging.
Okay. Online sessions where, let's say you're the speaker, you can't build too much of a rapport unless you come early and some of them also come early. Then you start, if you know them, good. But if you do not know them, announce your name and ask them. For example, normally when I hear somebody with a different name, I said, that's a very unusual name. Can you tell me what it means? I did that recently. This girl said her name was Pratichi. I said, Patichi, that's a very unusual name. What does it mean? And she said, it means the West. So I said, West. She said, W-E-S-T. I said, wow, I've never heard that before. Immediately, I've established a rapport. And then when someone came and they said, please meet Amitabh Bachchan. So I laughed. I said, why do they call you Amitabh Bachchan? Are you a good actor? No, ma'am, I have a deep voice and I'm tall. So I said, okay, I will now remember you only as Amitabh Bachchan. So you do something, but you have to be very quick on your feet.
Voice is very important, and voice modulation is very important. No?
Yes.
The voice is critical. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll take just one last question, because we've run out of time. People are talking about, creativity and putting designer presentations, putting smart pics into this thing. Does that work?
No, I don't know what they mean. I might need to talk to the person concerned. When you use the word dhakad presentation, it's a kind of, you're taking out of a normal presentation program those items that will make it dhakad. So then to that extent, it becomes designer. So if someone has a designer beard, it's different from the normal beards. Isn't that right? Yeah. Or designer clothes. So I would say, Mukesh, creativity, इसमें इतनी ज़्यादा मत लाओ. हाँ, if you're a CEO and you're giving a motivational talk to your audience, please introduce stories. Please make it creative. I was talking about Alice in Wonderland.
Right.
Talking about goal setting.
Right.
So I said, put up a cartoon of Alice at the where the road divides into two and the Cheshire Cat is sitting on that branch. And now that's creativity.
Yeah.
But you
so
can't
it
use
depends.
it too much.
What you're saying, what I hear you say is it depends on the type of presentation. If it's a business presentation, then the scope for creativity is somewhat more limiting. Whereas if it's a motivation or other kind of presentation.
Mukesh, creativity is very good when you are a CEO and you're giving a motivational talk to your audience.
Okay.